I'm joined by Daniel Seifert, Vice President and Regional Managing Director of EMEA in Coinbase. So thank you very much for taking the time to chat to me today.
Pleasure to be here.
So tell me a little bit about what Coinbase does, first of all.
Coinbase increases economic freedom in the world. That's our stated mission and has been our mission for over 10 years. We have, from the start of the company, been fascinated by the possibilities of cryptographic assets and the possibilities that they bring to, in the beginning was maybe 1 million, then 10 million, then 100 million, but now we sort of set our sights on the next, bringing the next billion people into crypto in terms of how they can interact both with financial assets and financial services, but also the evolution of Web3 and the future of the internet.
So tell me a little bit more about those technological advances. You know, there's been a lot of evolution in the financial industry over the last number of years with Web3, with crypto. How have you seen those changes evolve in recent years?
Yeah, there's been a lot of change, really, right? It's a rapidly evolving space, very exciting. I mean, you know, you could almost, I mean, like I was going to say, you know, it all started with Bitcoin. And actually, if you look at the space, right, I mean, researchers have been working on this by far longer than just Bitcoin, right? It started much, much earlier. But if we sort of, certainly Bitcoin was like a decisive inflection point. So the first time that we had assets that could not be duplicated, that were permissionless, trustless on the blockchain, really was the start of that. And then with the introduction, I would say, of Ethereum, which really on a working functional level introduced smart contracts, which sets Ethereum very much apart from Bitcoin and other cryptographic chains. We've then moved sort of into a space where lots of exciting innovation and applications on chains like Ethereum happened, and quickly ran into issues or challenges of scale. So, you know, because so many people were excited to interact with these new technologies that it kind of became a problem, you know, and things that maybe we take for granted in traditional financial services, so the amount of transactions that we can process per second, the speed at which it goes, etc. You know, they were actually, you know, had to be still solved on the blockchain. And so some of the very, very interesting and exciting developments that we see at the moment is what's called layer 2s. So sort of additional protocols that run on top that enable this sort of very fast, almost lightning speed throughput on these original blockchains.
And how does that sort of advancements sit in the sort of, as we look to the future, because we still have the traditional financial institutions, traditional banks, how people move their money and use their money, and that has traditionally been maybe seen as a slow-moving industry, particularly with tech adoption. So how do you see that balance being struck in the future?
Well, I think I'm very convinced that we'll see more and more utility, more and more use cases, and more adoption of blockchain as a technology. And I mean, we don't know, right? I mean, that can take many forms the way this will come, right? And I think it will be difficult to predict what's in 5 years, what's in 10 years. But I think one prediction, or like one picture that I very clearly see in front of myself, is this sort of ever-increasing adoption of blockchain technology, because it just enables so many things. So when I'm thinking about, I'll just pick one, when I'm thinking about a remittance use case, so, you know, I'm trying to send money from one country to another. If that is within, let's say, the European Union, it's fairly good, it's fairly easy, fairly standardized, there's single European payments area, right? Like, this moves fairly quickly. But like once I go outside of the European Union, it becomes a very costly process. It can take multiple days. I've sent the money, but it hasn't arrived yet. I don't know, where is it, right? You know, is it still in process? Whereas if I'm using blockchain technology, basically the minute I send it, it can arrive on the other side of the world almost like instantly, and I can publicly track that this is actually taking place.
And that's the societal piece, really, that I think when we talk about these technologies, they can get a bit more into the tech space that, you know, the wider population might not be able to be aware of, but they think, oh, if I can send money much faster because of this technology, it really makes a difference. Tell me a little bit about financial inclusion when it comes to bringing people along on a sort of a technical journey and things like that, particularly with adopting these new kind of financial technologies.
Yeah, that is another very, very good aspect, right? I think, you know, certainly, I mean, we're sitting here in Dublin where we're recording this, right? I think certainly in these parts of the world, it's, you know, people typically have access to infrastructure. They can use these services. They're well used to using these services. But there are many parts of the world where this is difficult. And we do see in a number of markets, and again, probably outside of the European Union, that people, for various reasons, for, you know, maybe because they are in an environment that they feel is perhaps for their liking too inflationary, or because they maybe want to take ownership and control of their assets themselves, or because otherwise perhaps they don't have access even to any financial services, they discover blockchain and blockchain-based technologies and cryptographic assets for themselves and start to use these. So this is a very organic growth that we're seeing at the moment.
And then looking at the other challenges that usually come with kind of financial areas, you know, how can blockchain help with these things? Maybe cybersecurity, for example, or security in general. And another challenge that financial institutions often face is regulation. How do you see that adopting with the new technology?
I mean, it's a very timely question. Just now in October 2023, Coinbase has announced that it will submit its application for MiCA, so the markets and crypto assets regulation in the European Union, in Ireland, which we're very happy about. So I think this is it is a space that's evolving in that regard, and I think certainly the European Union is a leading light or leading the way in terms of policy making, regulation of the crypto space. So this is very clearly an evolution that's taking place right before our eyes. So this is I would say, you know, this is really like the path forward in that sense for the industry.
And tell me a little bit more about that decision for the MiCA license in Ireland. Why that location?
Yeah, we've embarked on I mean, as you would always expect, on a thorough and months-long, perhaps year-long process when we were thinking about this. All the potential member states or jurisdictions that we considered were large member states of the European Union, sophisticated and well-respected regulators, I mean, as we were thinking about that, I mean, certainly, let's say, pre-existing operations were playing a role. Again, the political support and sort of the sophistication of the regulators in a certain market were important considerations. Also, and last but not least, access to deep talent pools. So those were some of the considerations that we had as we embarked on that decision journey and kind of came to the conclusion at the end that Ireland would be the right choice. And
looking back at those kind of technology trends as well, you know, we talked about blockchain and the evolution of that and the cryptocurrency. Are there any other emerging technology trends that you see affecting the finance areas in the future? I know generative AI has obviously been a massive...
that would have been the thing exactly to call out, right? Exactly. And I would say, I'm actually going to repeat this just because I think is such a fundamental and important technology and breakthrough almost, right? And I think one of I mean, we've all been following perhaps at the time we were calling it machine learning, and then now we're calling it then artificial intelligence, now generative artificial. But I think it's for a good reason, because generative artificial intelligence is really much different and much more impressive and better than what we used to have perhaps like 5 or 10 years ago, right? And so certainly also within Coinbase, we're experimenting, and we're already seeing benefits. So we have, I mean, as you would kind of expect, we've sort of made our own version of some of these tools, right? And a number of teams, I think is easily in excess of 20, 30 teams in different locations in the world that are experimenting now with generative artificial intelligence. Yeah, I mean, to make the work faster, better, to take some of the elements that perhaps were repetitive, to take them out.
Perfect. And looking ahead, I know it's difficult, as you said, you can't really predict what might happen in the next 5 to 10 years, but you know, there's been a lot of talk over the last few years in particular with technology about the idea of a cashless society. Is that something you see happening in the future, or do you think cash will always be there?
So it is something, let's say, if you, on a very personal note, I would love to see a cashless society, so that's certainly something I'm very interested in. I mean, we already do see it, right? If you go to Sweden, I think there's rarely any place where they accept cash. So yeah, I mean, 100%.
Do you think that will cause a bit of a barrier with maybe financial inclusion? Do you think that's one of the challenges to a cashless society?
I think that is certainly areas that can be overcome, because again, like we see Sweden, right? And Sweden is certainly one of the, you would probably call it more inclusive societies, in the sense that, you know, I mean, they have a great welfare state, right? They're a role model for many countries worldwide, right? Like, so I think, you know, many countries worldwide would look to the Nordics and say, like, that's a great place to end up.
Perfect. And finally, coming back to Coinbase in general, its journey that it's been on and where it's going next, is there anything that you can share in terms of what Coinbase is hoping to achieve in the financial area next?
Yeah, I mean, as I was saying, right, we've got our eyes firmly set on bringing the next billion people into crypto, so into this ecosystem and environment. What is really important for us at this stage, and what we've got basically the whole company focused on, is utility and use cases. So I think while, you know, maybe some of the past developments, they were certainly very focused around trading and speculation and these kind of aspects. And certainly, you know, businesses in this space and technology in this space were proving very well adapted to that, let's say like that, right? We definitely want to go beyond that, and we can go beyond that, and we're very excited to go beyond that. Because I was giving earlier this example of remittances. I think that is a very obvious one, but there can be other cases like foreign exchange, so you can think about that being facilitated by blockchain. But you can go even much further and think things like digital identity. You know, these are some green shoots that we're seeing in this area that are happening right now, and I think those can be very exciting. Or like digital sovereignty, so taking charge, taking control, taking ownership of your own data. You know, there's a number of networks out there, like social networks out there, that sort of work on Web3 protocols now, and kind of allow the user to take their data and their whatever they have published, let's say, or whatever they posted online, their content really, right, with them. So they're like, would be moving from one network to the next network, and it goes with them, right? So, and I think this is really, these pieces like digital identity, digital sovereignty, really like the future of the internet, really, if you will, that is very exciting. I mean, it's still a small way out, let's say like this, right? I mean, like we're still, everybody's still working on that, but I'm sure we'll see it.
That's great. Thank you very much for chatting to me today, Daniel.
Been a pleasure.